Next up, we have had our amazing apprentice panel with us this morning, but without an employer, where would an apprentice go? So they equally play an important role in the whole system. Our apprentices did very much talk around actually that importance of having a line manager and that senior exec engagement within their businesses, and also how important having that connection, that support, the resources in place to keep them engaged during their apprenticeship as well. So, should we get some employers up?
Should we get them on?
Let's go, let's go.
So, to chair this panel, we've got the lovely Susanna Lawson. Can we have a round of applause?
There was even a hey there.
Thank you, Susanna. Can we get Ricky Lees from British Airways, Jane Knight from Successful Mums Careers Academy, Kirsty Adams from Compass Group, and Pete Milsom from UCAS. Huge round of applause for our panel, please.
Don't forget to sit under your face. There we are. And you've even bought the hat, so we know it's you.
Okay, let's make a start. Thank you for attending this session, and thank you for inviting me to be the chair today. So as we have just heard from those fantastic apprentices, we were just saying how eloquent, their points of view, so concise, so educationally informed. We now have the other point of view. So we've got 4 employers in one sense or another on the panel today to share what they are doing to hire, retain and inspire apprentices to their organisation. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Susanna Lawson. I'm co-founder of OneFile. For those of you that don't know me, my background is actually health and social care. I was working in nursing homes as a carer. And then I specialised with adults with learning disabilities, and I had to do my NVQ2 back in the day. I went on to be a level 3, became an assessor and a verifier, and I saw that there was huge inefficiencies in the way that apprenticeships were being delivered, and that's when I came up with the idea for OneFile, because there was this new fandangled thing called Tinternet available, so I saw a way to solve that solution. So at OneFile, we've been obviously a massive advocate. We want to practice what we preach, so we've also an employer of apprentices. We've had apprentices in customer service, business admin, sales, marketing, software development, accounting, user experience, HR, and I myself started the level 7 senior leader as well. But there is obviously, as we know, a huge issue. There's a huge, influx of people that are taking on apprentices now. We are finally, hopefully, seeing the cogs turning in apprentices being seen as an alternative to university, which is what we've aspired to do for all these years. But there aren't going to be enough vacancies for every single apprentice that wants to, or hopeful apprentice that wants to apply. I was speaking to a construction firm up in Bolton just the other day. They had 17 apprenticeship vacancies and they had 1,200 applications for those. So it was obviously going to be a lot of disappointed. They went out to their supply chain and said, we've got some fantastic applicants. They managed to find them another 40 vacancies, but obviously there's still a lot to go there to find them all vacancies. So what can we do as employers to get the senior leadership team on board with creating vacancies? If a vacancy comes up, can it be an apprenticeship? And also, what can we do to attract the best talent, to retain the best talent, and then to inspire them and develop them further? So, as we said on the panel, we've got Ricky, Jane, Kirsty and Pete, and they'll all be coming from their own personal points of view. So if we start off then, so Ricky and Kirsty, so when you're organising, we're going to do an introduction first, do a quick intro. Ricky, obviously we've heard from you already, we'll do a quick one.
So just very quick recap. So I look after the development and delivery of our emerging talent schemes at British Airways.
Hi everybody, Kirsty Adams, and I'm the Talent Development Director at Compass, UK and Ireland. We are a food and hospitality organisation that we are a huge employer in the UK and a big advocate of apprentices, but I say to people, we're the biggest unknown brand that you will come across. We're in everything from renewable energy, defence, healthcare, schools, typical restaurants and everything else that you can imagine in between. But people don't know a lot about us. So I'm really keen to share with you what we're up to in the world of apprenticeships and growing that talent.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Pete Milson from UCAS, and I'm Partnerships Manager, and I work on the Apprenticeships programme at UCAS. I've been there for a couple of years now, just over 2 years. Before that, I had many years, probably more than I care to mention, in independent training provision. But it's great to be working at UCAS on our project to draw parity between the apprenticeships experience and the undergraduate experience. And obviously, you'll know UCAS is a charity that helps people get other people into university, and put really simply, we want to do the same for apprentices and make that pathway as well supported and as straightforward as it is for people that want to go to university. But I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more later, and let me pass on. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi everybody, I'm Jane Knight from Successful Mums Career Academy, and my background is I'm a teacher, I'm a career advisor, and I've worked for a number of ITPs, I've worked at colleges, and for those of you wise enough to remember, I used to work for the techs. Anybody remember the techs? Oh, there's a little grumble there. Yeah, so the techs were before the LSCs, and then obviously evolved into the SFAs and the ESFA, etc. And when I had my family, I could really see a demand to support mums back to work. Those of you in the room that are parents or carers will know it's a very challenging job. However, there are lots of transferable skills us mums, us parents, can take into the workplace. And you'll see from my bio, I had a goal to help 100 mums. We've since supported almost 10,000 women returners now, and it's a relatively untapped market. So today, really, I'm here to talk about how you can tap into that market for your workforce, but also for potential apprentices as well. 40% of these women want a new career, and because we will be probably working till we're late 60s, maybe 70s and beyond, a lot of these women, you know, they're at a perfect age, have so much work experience and life experience to start a new career and do an apprenticeship.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so if we make a start with Kirsty and Ricky first of all. So obviously your organisations are at different stages of your apprenticeship journeys. So how do you get senior leadership involved in understanding sort of the recruitment side? So as I said earlier, if a vacancy comes up, can it be filled with an apprenticeship? So can we train somebody to learn it? And how easy is it to get the senior leadership team involved and sort of inspired to understand that this is a really great pipeline? So, Kirsty.
I've got the mic, I'll go first. You're on a journey with apprenticeships, and the first thing that we did was we really got the executive team on board. And what do we mean by that? We sat there and said, you know, what are the benefits of the apprenticeship programs? What skills can it help us acquire for our business? At the same time, we were linking it into big programs that we were launching across campus. So last year, we made a commitment to provide 1 million opportunities for people by 2030. And apprenticeships form a big part of that commitment. So there was a bit of I wouldn't say a commercial imperative, but a commercial and social imperative around that. So that got them interested. The other thing was the piece around, once you got the executive on board, it was getting to those hiring managers to be really candid and talking to them about the benefits of having apprenticeships in their organisations from a skills perspective, but also from the perspective of future leaders within the organisation. Because there is some myth busting to do around apprenticeships, lowly skilled, and you know, not necessarily taking those top jobs within the organisation. So we did a lot of work around that and spent a lot of time and energy in that space. And actually, when we were getting some momentum, started talking about it. The storytelling is such a powerful thing in any organisation, but especially in a large organisation. So I was saying to our friends earlier, I am so proud, and I get out there and I talk about it. Somebody started a level 3 apprenticeship in culinary, because obviously we're food and hospitality. We offer a whole host of apprenticeships, 60 within the organisation. But particularly talking about this individual who did their level 3 culinary apprenticeship, started to build their confidence, started to see opportunities, took those opportunities. Long story short, we sold a career to that individual. They then took an internal move, and then they're now a chef in New Zealand, in the New Zealand side of our business. So it's all about saying apprenticeships is not training just for a skill in a role. It's about come and have a career with us, and when people are being successful in having a career, start to tell those stories.
Fantastic.
Doesn't that pick up, sorry, Susanna, doesn't that pick up on, I think, Emma's point around start at the beginning? Start at the end, thank you, because then you're selling that story and that career to somebody, because otherwise they might just focus on what am I going to do in the first month. But if you can say longer term, this is where you can be, and then work backwards, I think people really can sort of visualise that, can't they? So it's a really good sort of onboarding technique.
And it's also part of the attraction strategy, if I'm candid, because when you're talking to apprentices about what a career could look like in our organisation, the storytelling, also having apprenticeships come and talk to them as part of the hiring process is really, really powerful. But again, we also do, I wouldn't say suffer, but there is an overwhelming application list for apprentices or people wanting to come on the apprenticeship scheme. So it's balancing the two, but absolutely the storytelling piece. And I've got lots of stories to share.
I think that's a great piece of advice. Often when we interview, we have a panel of senior people that interview, but having an apprentice, because don't forget, you're interviewing them, but they're interviewing you as well, because they might have several offers. So you want them to choose you as an organisation. So to have an apprentice, a successful apprentice on that panel who's able to answer what it is like to be an apprentice at British Airways or Compass is a phenomenal opportunity, and why would you not take that? So I think that's great advice. Ricky?
Thank you. Yeah, so we have what we're calling our flagship program at the moment, just because it's won a couple of awards in the last few months. It's called the Business Professional Apprenticeship, and it's taken on a bit of a it's adapted over the years. It started as a 2-year scheme, which was rotational around the business with no real focus on what their end goal was going to be. And I had a mad idea about 4 years ago to turn it into a 3-year apprenticeship. And in the first year, they would study a business administrator level 3. And then in the second and third year, based on those rotations that they've covered in the business, they would pick where they want their career to go. So it wouldn't necessarily be filling a pipeline of what we need. It's what the individual wants and bases their choices on their career. So as an instance, we've got Zoe, her name is, she started in 2022. She did a rotation in the Emerging Talent Development Delivery team, and she's now working with Mary Brew in our Flying Start partnership with Comic Relief, and she's doing the level 4 fundraiser. So she's actually working on that pipeline because she's identified herself that's what her career progression is going to be. And that then feeds into the attraction, because you do have about 40 to 50% of individuals that don't have a clue what they want to do with their career. We offer apprenticeships in some very historically apprenticeship friendly roles like engineering or in our engineering workshops, but we also try and bulk out with more generic opportunities for people. So we offer level 6 chartered manager, which is called Aspiring Leaders, and that follows the same sort of pathway as the business professional. They can make their own decision of where their career is going, rather than us saying we need to fill this role, let's bring an apprentice in. We do it that we bring in apprentices in regardless, but we react and adapt to what the individual needs based on the needs of the business. So it becomes a very balanced view.
Fantastic. And Pete, if I can come to you from UCAS's point of view, obviously for years, we have talked about this parity of esteem. We want apprentices to be seen as the same level as going to university. We want it to be an option. I had a message from a friend a few months ago saying, oh my God, I can't believe it. Oliver's been offered his degree level apprenticeship software engineering. We can throw his university applications in the bin now. We don't need to go. Absolutely. That's, I've spent years coaching her about apprenticeships for her children, but it's not always like that. So what is UCAS doing for that sort of parity with parents or carers and also with employers?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm pleased to hear that there have been great strides made, I think, in bringing parity between the university and the apprenticeship experience. I think it's fair to say that although we've come a long way, particularly in the last 3 years, there's still a long way to go. But for around 3 years now, then UCAS has been on this journey to broaden our services out to include apprenticeships as well. And for the last 30 years since UCAS has been around in its current iteration, although in various iterations have been around since the early 60s, then around that admissions service to university has grown up this whole digital discovery wrapper. So if you want to go to university, you can come to UCAS, you can explore all the university courses out there, you can have almost virtual tours of a university, you can engage in peer-to-peer chat with people that are already at university. And on your way there as well, then you're supported with your personal statement, you're supported with finance, accommodation, and by the time you get to your halls of residence on day one, then you have been pretty well supported on your way there, and you've got a very good idea of what you're going to get when you get there as well. And put really simply, we want to do the same for the apprenticeship experience. We want to make that discovery service that I taught that grew up around the admission system. We want to make that as high spec, as high fidelity, as aspirational as the university discovery as well, and also the journey to becoming an apprentice, and that's what we want to do. And if you remember nothing else about what UCAS is doing, just remember that everything we do for a potential undergraduate student, we want to do for a would-be apprentice as well. We want to make those experiences as valuable, and we think that by positioning apprentices and university options on the same platform out on UCAS, the university people, then we really can draw parity between the two experiences. And it's a great idea, of course, but we also know from our audience as well that there's significant demand out there as well. So when people come to UCAS and they come through our digital front doors, about 1.5 million of them a year, we ask them, are you interested in apprenticeships? Would you like to know more? Would you like to opt in to our talent pool? And a very consistent 40% of them say yes. Now that's grown since we first started asking the question in 2021. But in absolute terms, this year in January, equal consideration deadline, that was nearly 500,000 people that say yes, we're interested in apprenticeships. So we know that that demand is there. We know that that audience coming to UCAS, where they're already coming to discover trusted information. We're a very trusted brand. We know that they want this information, that we can give them to them. And we as UCAS, that for many years people have been coming to get that trusted information about university, then we can really give those would-be apprentices the information they need. We've made great strides, particularly in the last year, about bringing that experience, that parity of experience to apprenticeships and undergraduate courses. One thing that really springs to mind is in our apprenticeship search on ucas.com, then we've positioned apprenticeship opportunities, live opportunities, side by side with university courses. So if you're an employer and you want to get a particular type of profile of apprentices for your apprenticeship program, you can come to UCAS and you can say, I would like 200 apprentice applicants for my digital marketing vacancy in Bolton. I'd like them to be interested in apprenticeships, please, hopefully in digital marketing too. I'd like them to live 10 miles away from my premises in Bolton. I'd like them to have grade 4 or above maths and English GCSE. You can define that criteria, and then that will match with our talent pool that people have signed up to Smart Alerts. So not only are we positioning those apprenticeship opportunities side by side with undergraduate opportunities, but we've also got a way to connect employers with would-be apprentices as well to make sure they get the right people for their programs.
Okay, that's absolutely fantastic. And I think, for parents that are, carers that are navigating that with their children, they'll be able to see that side by side, won't they? So again, it might get them asking the questions. And I think one of the issues is, obviously, we talked about the Baker Clause earlier, a lot of schools still aren't, unfortunately, getting training providers and apprenticeship providers and employers talking about apprentices to those individuals. So Kirsty and Ricky, do you sort of have school initiatives where you would go in and speak to people to create that pipeline coming through?
I'll go first this time. So that's more of a question for Mel, who's up here earlier, but I can answer it, luckily for you. Okay, so we as an organisation engage with over 40,000 students annually, and that's through school outreach, school engagement. We get some of our apprentices involved. They go and do presentations to their previous schools. They're absolutely encouraged to continue that relationship with them, and that starts driving that message that someone who they can relate to, because they are a alumni of that school or that college, has secured an apprenticeship at British Airways, so they can too. So it's quite a vast outreach that Mel looks after. Luckily, I don't look after that because that's a lot of numbers.
Kirsty, is that something that you guys do?
Yeah, we do, but we do a blend of things. So what we're trying to do is to build fewer, deeper relationships with schools and also communities where we have our centres or where we've got a presence. But we're also building relationships with charities as well on the sort of the social agenda side as well. So people that have experienced a barrier to entry into the workplace. So that could be a whole host of things. It could be returning mums. It could be people that have been out of work for a period of time for a variety of different reasons. Because we want to attract a diverse population and group of people across the sort of working generations into the organisation. So yes to schools, but it's a broader agenda as well that we're looking to really, really drive. And when I first joined Compass, lots of people said to me, for our frontline roles, we hire for smile and train for skill. At the time I thought, that sounds a bit cheesy. But actually, it's really powerful because we are capturing people that don't necessarily have, speak a C grade GCSE and above, level 4/5, or, people that are not academic. Equally, we offer the whole, all the way through to degree level apprentices. But I like the fact that we can offer apprenticeships, and it comes back to our hook is have a career with us. And we then can attract a whole host of individuals into the organisation. And I would, I suppose, suggest, maybe I'm giving my golden nugget a little bit earlier, but to people that are employing apprentices, keep your thinking broad and think about apprentices as people that join your organisation. You're training for skills, but you're building careers, because as the apprentices spoke earlier, the world's their oyster. They're just doing so many amazing things and coming from all just different types of backgrounds. And I was saying, I don't know why I'm so proud about it, but I am. We had apprentices that literally went to the Culinary Olympics this year in Germany. And yes, there is a Culinary Olympics, but and they are passionate, they are driving agendas, and they are creative, and they are competitive, and they're changing the world of work.
I think it's fantastic. And like you say, it's not just about the hiring, because if you lose them after the apprenticeship for whatever reason, they've done 18 months, 2 years with you, and then they go somewhere else, you want them to stay if they want to. So that's brilliant that you have that aspiration. So Jane, if we can come to you now at Successful Mums, obviously looking at people that maybe had their children, they want to have they've had a career break for whatever reason that might be. But I think, from in this day now, it is like we were talking about earlier, we don't have a job for life anymore. It's a life of jobs. So we might not necessarily stay in the same career for forever, and that, on that trajectory. Often it can be very wiggly. Where are we going? If I take my sister, she's 43 now. Sorry, Marie, for telling everyone your age. But she was an actress when she went to university. She did performing arts. She was on the West End stage for a number of years. She then became an account manager in a creative agency. At 41, she decided she wanted to be a butcher. So she's retraining now to be a butcher. Completely different, but she's in a situation where she's been able to do that. But, why should we stay in one trajectory for the rest of our lives? Because what we decide at 18 shouldn't necessarily be where we want to finish our career at 60, 65, 70 these days. So what are you doing at Successful Moms to support these women back into employment?
Well, I suppose the key thing is we all know we spend a lot of time at work. So if you can find a job you love, your mental health and your well-being and your whole demeanour should be so much more positive. Whereas when we're younger, not all the time, but unless you're really lucky, you're really focused and know what you want to do. I mean, I was just so impressed with the individuals that were talking on the last panel. Same as this panel as well, I'd like to say. But in terms of how we're supporting women returners, we will ask the open question, what would you do if money was no object? Because often these women might need to go back to work financially. Or what is your hobby? What do you love doing? How would you love to spend your time? You know, set aside your children. Many of them do that quite quickly. Yep, I've got lots of lovely hobbies. And then how could you actually turn that into a career? Because now is the chance if you're able to. And interestingly, we're working with more and more employers that are very sort of innovative in terms of they are taking on people that don't necessarily have any experience in that industry, but they want to take on people that instead have bright new ideas, haven't been moulded by the industry at all. And in fact, what these women returners bring to the table will be their previous work experience, whatever that looks like. It will be life experience, and hey, it will be the transferable skills from being a mum. Now, can we just have a few of those transferable skills? I've got 2 children now, so my conflict management skills are so much better than they used to be. What other skills do you have as a parent or a carer that you can bring to an employer? Organisational skills. Negotiation, yep, that's a good one. Patience, ironically. We could go on and on. I mean, budgeting, event management. My Daniel has had probably about 10 lovely birthday parties where the parents were happy, the children were happy, there were no peanuts. That is event management. Yet lots of women returners will say, I haven't done anything for the past 10 years. Well, they haven't been sitting on the sofa drinking hot tea. So it's around women returners understanding, 1, the many skills they have, and 2, employers understanding that. And something which I think is linked to your question, Susanna, is around employers being sort of forward-thinking and considering taking on people that might not match the whole job description, yet might have the transferable skills and the determination and the life skills and common sense to do that particular role. So we work across lots of different industries and lots of different employers that want to take on these women returners because they can provide and offer so much.
That's fantastic. So when we get on, so we talked, Kirsty, backstage, we were talking about sort of your focus isn't necessarily on the younger side all the time. So, you know, when you're looking at it wasn't even an old 24, 25, wasn't it? So it wasn't even, so, and then how do we support them to progress? I mean, we talked at the pathways, but how do they understand what roles there are in the organisations? And this is for Ricky as well.
So we do the classical thing in terms of internal mobility and promoting that as well. But the thing that we're constantly doing is the piece around ongoing training to keep your skill set sharpened through the apprenticeship program, but also making the not just apprenticeships, but apprenticeships future leader ready. So we run lots of signature programs, we call them in Compass, and I'll talk about 2. We run with Marcus Waring. So for those of you who do or don't know, he's a celebrity chef, and we use the apprenticeship program for our culinary chefs around an apprenticeship, a level 4 apprenticeship that he works with us with. And what that does is it gives the apprenticeships, he's a master at his craft, so he's teaching in the skills. We're wrapping it around with our sustainability agenda, so thinking about what we're looking for in the future as well. We run programs like that. We also run leadership programs, future leaders programs, and again, leadership and management, and we offer signature programs around that. So again, just keeping those skill sets sort of constantly being sharpened and developed. And what we're also doing is, it's actually here in Birmingham in Edgbaston, we've launched a new state-of-the-art training facility for people that want to have careers in the food and hospitality sector, not necessarily just within Compass, but with our partners as well. So we're doing lots of things to promote career development, career pathways, opportunities. And that's what keeps our apprentices engaged in developing within the organisation. I can't remember the stat that was quoted earlier, but it was, I think 50% of apprenticeships qualify and then leave and go elsewhere. We're really proud of our retention rate, which is 2/3 of our people that are on apprenticeship programmes stay within the organisation because of that ongoing promotion of come with us, have a career, we'll keep your skill set high and relevant, not only for you, but for where the business is going as well. And that comes back to the hook around why there's such an appetite to have apprenticeships in the organisation. And that's really, really important because it can't be seen as an HR-driven initiative or something that you're pushing out. You're successful when you get the pull from the organisation. And I come back to hiring managers, attraction, storytelling. It's absolutely key.
Similar sort of things. We have different initiatives that we involve apprentices in. I mentioned it earlier where they get involved with the Flying Start charity initiatives. We also have internal leadership, which is called Be a Better Leader, original. I get it, but it's really effective, and we have 3 different pathways. So we have Be a Better Leader on the day, Be a Better Leader of Teams, and Be a Better Strategic Leader. And then we use that as a potential pipeline for people, and that's not just for full-time established permanent colleagues. We offer that out to apprentices as well, subject to their job role that they're completing on their apprenticeship. We also have different levels of apprenticeships. We build a pipeline from level 2, so you could join on a level 2 Heathrow operations where you're dealing with the below wing operation. You could then fast track onto one of our level 3 or level 5 schemes, level 6 schemes, and then all the way up to one of the graduate schemes. So we build, I think it's an 11 to 13 year pathway. Regardless of what entry point you join the business, you could then become a graduate and secure more of a senior leader role within the organisation. And it's having that in mind when you are discussing with people entering the business, this is where you could be. And one thing I didn't mention, Mel and team have an amazing partnership with the Prince's Trust. So we work very closely with those, and we secure and reserve certain spaces on our apprenticeship schemes for the Prince's Trust, so that we're building that socio-economic pathway into the organisation.
Fantastic. And I suppose I always like sort of practical nuggets for the delegates to go away with, and I know there will be a lot of training providers and colleges potentially in the room. So from your guys' points of view as the employer, Kirsty, apologies, are you an employer provider or do you outsource? You outsource. Okay, great. So that follows through to my question. So I was on a webinar the other day with AALP and the ESFA, and the new funding rule says that employers will no longer need to sign the tripartite review at that point. Now, obviously, the intention is that the employer or the manager will still have updates and read the review, but you don't actually need the signature on it for the ESFA audit. That's what they're saying. I think I shared my personal point of view that I'm a little bit concerned about that some training providers might then not update the manager, and therefore, because we know that the employer engagement is really pinnacle in the achievement and the motivation and the engagement of the apprentice. If they know their managers engage with their apprenticeship, they're much more likely to follow through and do everything that needs to be done. So how do you, because obviously from an HR point of view, the HR directors will be brought into the apprentices, but the line manager of those apprentices themselves, do you guys give training on that and what the apprentice, the apprenticeship scheme takes, the off-the-job training they're required, are they? Because I think a lot of training providers go in, they've spoken to the HR director, they're on board, but then the line managers further down the sort of pipeline aren't themselves aware. Ricky?
So, yes, we do line manager training, but we also go through safeguarding, we go through funding rules, we talk about off-the-job learning requirements, we talk about what's expected of those line managers. If they don't meet our high expectations, then they will not be qualifying for an apprentice placement in the next round and rotation. So we have quite a strict and stringent process tied up with that. As you can imagine, with a complex organisation like British Airways, the HR director isn't involved in the apprentices. That sits within me, my team, Mel's team, etc. So we then have that ability to influence and I use that word carefully, right, influence placement areas around what the expectations are. And we tend to call them placement areas instead of line management, because my team will line manage the apprentices from a performance, from a well-being, from everything to do with their employment at British Airways, but the placement managers manage their portfolio of work. So if that is going to change with the signature not required, quite simply, that's not going to cut it with us. We will still expect to be included. We will still want to sign off and say that we're happy with their progress. If they're not, then we will manage them against their contract that we have as a third-party provider of British Airways.
Kirsty?
Some similarities and a couple of differences. So Jonathan Foote in my team has got, he manages the apprenticeship programme on the sort of day-to-day basis and provides that wrap. And his team do an absolute stellar job in terms of working with line managers and also doing the education piece, what's involved in terms of having an apprentice in your team, what's the commitments, doing what we call myth busting. You know, the big thing is, well, can we really have an apprenticeship because they have to take time off the job to do learn, and really just doing that education piece, which is really, really important. But they also spend a lot of time in terms of the quality, because we want people coming out of apprenticeships with, you know, quality qualifications, and they spend a lot of time with the apprentices as well, making sure that, you know, they're in a good space, their needs are being met, but also with the hiring managers around what they, you know, what the do's and the don'ts are. You know, lots of people in a prior organisation used to say, I can't take on an apprenticeship, I just can't, you know, a day a week training, just can't give it to them. And it's about sitting there saying, actually, training comes in many forms: mentoring, training at work, job shadowing, a whole host of things, and spending some time around that piece there. So I'm actually, you know, completely aligned around the quality piece has to stay. Because it's concerning that the signature is going to potentially go, but irrespective for us, it's got to be that quality piece. It's about the outcomes we want.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting because obviously Ofsted will be going in, and you know they'll do that tripartite interview with the apprentice, the employer, and the training provider. And as long as they're all saying I'm being updated as an employer, that's great. But if there's no signature on the form, and then the employer says, I don't know where they're up to, then that's going to be a major problem at that point, isn't it? So it's quite interesting from your points of view that you would want to continue with the signature.
Or if not, some really good governance and quality around it. That's the key thing. I'm not governance that drives good outcomes, totally up for. Bureaucracy, form filling, not so much.
Pete,
Yeah, just to add to that, and this is from my provider days really, I'm not a direct employer of apprentices at UCAS, but just casting my mind back, then I think one of the USPs of apprenticeships is that employer involvement, and is that ability for the employer to shape that programme and mentor that apprentice all the way through. And in my experience, great managers make great apprentices, and that's where the success was. And anything that takes away that employer involvement, those touch points, I think we're entering into territory which is undesirable really, because you know, a training provider is great and fantastic, can do all the work they want, but they're not there for the majority of that programme. So I think that support from the manager, from the employer, and making sure that learner is supported all the way through and looked after is really key. And I think that's where apprenticeships thrive, and that is where apprenticeships fall as well, in my experience.
I completely agree, and I think it is, you know, really reassuring to hear two big employers there that do the training for the line managers themselves, for the people that will be involved.
So important. To
understand that they will need off-the-job training, they will need time away to do their studies, because like I said earlier, there's been research found that's when the apprentices will drop out, when they don't get their off-the-job time or their manager isn't bothered about their training. So fantastic. Right, we are coming to the end because we've had to cut us a little bit short because we're overrunning. Jane, there was a little ask that you wanted.
Sorry. Thank you for the prompt, Susanna. So as I've touched on, we help mums back to work. We take them through a back to work and confidence course, and then we link them with employers. We also run digital courses, autism awareness. We do business startup, And we also run wellbeing and menopause, a hot topic, excuse the pun, at the moment. So these are really important courses that our women returners want. We then take them through the flexible course, link them with employers, a pretty simple model. These women are then ready, I think, to do an apprenticeship, but we don't do apprenticeships at the moment. So 2 asks, if you are interested in taking these women returners further in terms of their career and an apprenticeship, do get in touch. And the second ask, and more pressing, we have a waiting list of 150 mums in London, Surrey and in Kent that want to do our courses. So if anybody has AEB funding, any underspend, please do get in touch because we have these women ready to go. And what we do, I think, is very niche. It's all about mums supporting mums, but I can really see an opportunity in the future for mums and apprenticeships as well. So thank you.
I told Jane she was missing a trick if she didn't ask for any AEB underspend in the room. So thank you very much to the panel today, to Jane, to Pete, Kirsty and Ricky. Hopefully you've seen it from the other side, the other point of view. We've heard from the amazing apprentices, and now we've heard from some amazing employers and some organisation that support the employers as well. Hopefully you took some nuggets that you could maybe go back if you're a training provider or a college or an employer, to go back to your own organisations to support the employers themselves or your own line managers. But I think everybody is around for the next few hours and over lunch. So because we were cut the time short, we didn't have time for Q&A, but please come and find any of the panel and ask them any questions. So it's time for lunch. So thank you very much.